welcome back to the stage, Eric Kraft.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good break. Fred never told me you're allowed to leave the stage. I may try that one of these times. But for now, we've got our second keynote of the day. If a few years ago, I think it would have been kind of tough to imagine Google doing a keynote at Enterprise Connect. And now we have, for the second year in a row, Adam Swidler from Google here to talk to you about what Google for Work is doing to integrate communications and collaboration with the productivity and Office applications that they provide. And I think that's, again, a testimony to the way that communications is just starting to permeate and pervade everything that happens in the workplace and integrate with multiple applications. And Adam is going to be out in a second, and he's going to bring out, as you can see, a couple of guests who will describe how Google is working with partners and customers to do these integrations. So I'm going to let them get started right now. Please join me in welcoming. It's a great pleasure to have back again this year, Adam Swidler, Technology Evangelist, Google at Work for Google.
Thanks very much, Eric. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be back here at Enterprise Connect for the second year in a row. One of the things that happens a lot when Google comes to a conference like this is people say, what are you doing here, and are you serious about the enterprise business? So despite my claiming, yes, we are serious about the enterprise business umpteen times, anytime I get the chance, I did want to share one significant piece of news that's occurred for Google in the enterprise space since the last time I was up here. And that was the acquisition of a company called Bebop and their founder, Diane Greene, who also happens to be the co-founder of VMware. And we acquired Bebop, and we brought Diane on board to lead and accelerate the externalization of Google's infrastructure for the computing needs of organizations of all sizes, be it packaged applications such as Gmail or Google Drive, or be it bespoke or custom applications built on top of our cloud platform. So while we've had a certain success and a certain trajectory externalizing our infrastructure, this move, bringing Diane on board, someone who has an entire career dedicated to the enterprise space, taking our teams and really working to accelerate the externalization of that infrastructure, I think is a very significant statement to the market about how serious we are about this. We believe that this space could one day be another multi-$10 billion revenue stream for Google, equal in order of magnitude to our advertising revenue. We are very serious about the enterprise space. So, leveraging the power of collaboration. If you walk through the halls here at the Vendor Expo, you will probably see this 150 times at the 100 vendors that are exhibiting here. Everybody's talking about leveraging the power of collaboration because it's obvious that it'll be beneficial to your organization, right? It seems very clear and very obvious. The problem can be that ineffective collaboration can actually slow people down. And while you have the best of intent to create a social collaborative environment, if you don't do it with the right tools and the right processes, you have a great chance of creating sort of death by committee or decision paralysis, as no one can make a decision while you're all collaborating and communicating. So ineffective collaboration can really be detrimental to an organization. Now, in Silicon Valley, we don't exactly have a long tradition of proverbs, but we do have this one. In 30 years, we've changed the tools that we do our work with, but the work that we do remains largely unchanged. Let me tell you what I mean by that. 30 years ago, this is how we worked in an office. We wrote memos with pen or pencil. We put them in inter-office envelopes. We sent them around. They were commented on with highlighters and red lines, and eventually 2 weeks later, they came back to the author who made all those updates and produced the final version of the document. Well, if we fast forward to today, many organizations are using that same work process with just a different set of tools. We're creating the document. We're communicating it by attaching it to an email. We're commenting on it using track changes or similar functionality. And then someone at the end is consolidating all those versions, and inevitably, the right version becomes a debate and a discussion, and not a particularly useful one. So what's the difference between collaboration that works and collaboration that doesn't? Well, I could stand up here and show you guys a bunch of slides and describe to you and show you visions of what good collaboration looks like and what bad collaboration looks like. But rather than do kind of a dog and pony show and a bunch of product demos, what I wanted to do was take this opportunity to have a real-life customer case study come up and share with you their experience of moving to a modern IT platform that enables the type of communication and collaboration that's unlocking true value for their organization. So what I'd like to ask you to do is help me in welcoming up to the stage Greg Meyers, CIO of Motorola Solutions, and Craig Walker, CEO of the newly minted Dialpad. Give them a hand. Come on out, guys.
All right, thanks.
Gentlemen, have a seat over here. Make yourself comfortable. So I'd like to remind the audience that you have an opportunity to ask questions of Craig and Greg to understand what they've been through, what Greg in particular and Motorola Solutions has been through in their transformation. And we've talked about it a little bit, Greg, but I wanted to help the audience understand the transformation, some might even say the beautiful transformation that Motorola Solutions has been going through. And I think the story kind of starts on day one when you walked into your office. So tell us a little bit first about Motorola Solutions and then your first day at the office.
Sure. So Motorola is a pretty, I guess, legendary brand name in high tech. So we invented the mobile phone. We invented cable set-top boxes. The first words on the moon were spoken on a Motorola device. Steve Jobs introduced the Mac with the Motorola chip in it. But today, it's a very different company. The mobile business is now part of Lenovo. So the Motorola brand, that's part of the device is part of Lenovo. And our main business now is in mission-critical communications in the public sector primarily. So a lot of our business is around police, fire, communication devices. And we're a company that's sort of moving from becoming a traditional device manufacturer to more and more becoming a services, software, and solutions company. So that's sort of a little bit about Motorola. I think our story is probably really similar to a lot of other people in the room. I mean, if you walk around the expo, I walked around the expo yesterday. I mean, there's hundreds of different companies all selling unified communications, and it's always a slice of it. So I think we looked very similar to that. So, I think a couple days before, actually a week before I started, it took nearly a week and probably 30 emails back and forth between me and the team. Like, hey, can I have my org chart and can I get my budget? But between that crazy extranet document deal where they had to put a help desk ticket in to get a username and password, and then the link wasn't right and the permissions weren't right. I mean, it took a lot of days for me just to get access to simple documents as an outsider. My first staff meeting, which was on the first day, started 10 minutes late because there was confusion as to we were using Link for screen sharing and Intercall for audio, but then somebody else was using GoToMeeting. And so I think everyone has seen this, that much like a lot of other companies, you make these decisions over time, these point solutions for point problems, but then what you're left with is this sort of hodgepodge of stuff that doesn't really work together. And so I think we knew, really just to be a more productive company, we had to really, I think, just hit the reset button on the whole thing.
And Craig, you have made a career, I think, of bringing telephony into the cloud for enterprise use. I think you said this is your 4th consecutive Enterprise Connect, and big announcement yesterday. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history and leading up to yesterday's announcement?
Yeah, so the announcement yesterday was we changed the name of the company from Switch.co to Dialpad, which we're really happy about. Had a couple, announced some executives, and Rich Miner, the co-founder of Android, joining our board. But yeah, our team goes back to over a dozen years of next-gen telephony. We did a company that got acquired by Yahoo to bring calling into the Yahoo Messenger product. Left Yahoo to start a company called Grand Central that became Google Voice, and we built that to tens of millions of users. And then left Google to really focus Dialpad on enterprise communications and making business communications great. So we have Uber Conference as our conferencing product, and then we have Dialpad as our pure cloud-based unified communication product.
Fantastic. And one of the things we talked about yesterday, if you were here for the keynote, is our philosophy at Google is to partner with leading providers on the telephony side. And so that's why we were able to come together with Dialpad to offer a really rich and complete solution to Motorola Solutions as they look to move to a modern IT infrastructure. And so, Greg, take us back to that first day when you walked into the office after you got access to some of those documents as an outsider.
Yeah.
You walk in, and what do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, the Ameritech phone that's from 1997 that has 13 buttons on it that you don't really know what any of them do. You know, it's a traditional sort of scenario that we had to go through. I think for us, when we looked at what kind of company we wanted to be and the kind of culture we had, I think we had certain ideas in mind. One is that it was an old notion that people are sort of stuck in their office all day long, right? And that's what hard phones are for. That's what rich desktop applications are for. And so for us, the idea was really how do you make the organization as mobile and how do you focus on teamwork over individual work? And I think for us, we did a lot of things. We replaced over 3,000 wireless access points to 802.11ac. We shut down all the Ethernet ports in the office spaces. And we really just kind of went all in on the idea of cloud mobility and believing that cloud and mobile was going to be much more the way our organization was going to start to work, as opposed to being sort of tethered to offices with big monitors and hard phones and all that. So we were really lucky to just be able to start to move on a whole fresh, clean slate.
So, Craig, I know that Dialpad has been having tremendous success, in sort of new companies, be they small, mid-size, or large. But for a large existing enterprise like Motorola Solutions, 22,000 workers, combination of full-time and contractors, must have kind of brought a tear to your eye when you saw them able to move, as they were probably one of the larger customers at the time. Is their situation common? Do you run into that a lot?
Yeah, it brings a big tear to my eye. Actually, it was. We saw firsthand when we worked at Google and we're a Google Apps customer ourselves, the amount of productivity you gain by letting your employees or letting our team or any company work from anywhere, from any device at any time. And our whole hypothesis was more and more businesses and enterprises and traditional large enterprises are going to be doing that because there's such a productivity gain and there's such kind of a happiness gain for the workers, that it's insane to have a PBX sitting on a desk when you're spending less and less time at your desk, and you need to be, you've now enabled them to work from anywhere on any device, except for the phone system. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of it, and it is really encouraging to see these larger organizations, established companies, getting that, and really once you take that first step into the cloud on the productivity suite, the telephony has to go with it.
Yeah. Greg, you alluded a little bit to the focus on sort of cloud and mobile, but can you talk a little bit more specifically about what led you to investigate, cloud, email, and collaboration solutions, and ultimately how you ended up choosing the Google solution?
Yeah. So I think that as we, if you have that philosophy that it's cloud and mobile will trump PC and desktop, and if you believe that everything is going to be wireless, and you believe that your workforce is mobile, you've got to then start to look at some principles around the vendor stack. So for us, I mean, certain philosophical choices like preferring to use a vendor that's maybe more locked into open source and open architectures, where the innovation comes from crowdsourced ecosystems as opposed to kind of proprietary vendor stacks where the innovation is directly a result of how much R&D one vendor puts into their product. So I think that was one thing. And I think also the key piece was around simplicity, because if you're going to assume that a lot of work is going to get done on mobile phones, you have to almost make a choice around elegance and simplicity over sort of complicated, right, and complex. So I think as we scanned the marketplace around, and we made the decision about 1.5 years ago, and I think as we looked through that, we felt that Google and Dialpad, which was probably a few months later, that those two companies really, not only did they work well together, but they were super simple. I mean, just very elegant and simple for our users to use. A lot of change involved in that, which I can talk about, but for us, it was really more about it fitting really well with our own philosophy.
Yeah, and I think simplicity has been a bit of a theme here at the conference this year. I think Roland talked about it in the session before this. Even the existing incumbent vendors are working hard to kind of try to simplify their offerings. But I think when you bring sort of a fresh approach to it, you're able to really focus on the user, which is, of course, something that is very deeply important to Google. But in particular, I read this interesting design approach yesterday that said, to really create a beautiful experience for users, you actually have to take features away from them, which is kind of the opposite of the way that, that enterprise computing had been going for quite some time. So it's good to see that come around. Let's talk a little bit about the migration and the sort of cutover and the go live, and take us through sort of that experience, because we talked about it, moving 22,000 people essentially in a single day. Of course, lots of preparation leading up to it. But tell us about the prep and then G-Day, as it became known.
Yeah, we did. April 13th, 2015, we moved 22,000 users in one day from Microsoft Office 2007 with Office 365 as a backend to the Google stack. I mean, everything, Hangouts, Gmail. It was very extraordinary. And I think for us, it was extraordinary in a lot of ways. One, I think, just because there was a whole carnival atmosphere. So the first thing we did is we took every IT employee and said, your day job, you're not doing anything in your day job but Google for like the whole week. And so you had that. And then we went out and solicited 2,000 volunteers in the business, which we called Google Guides. So on April 13th, I mean, 2,300 people showed up in orange shirts that day and tied orange balloons to their cubicles that day. And we're there really in full support of each and every user. And over really a 2-day period, which we extended our support out a few days, we touched almost every one of those 22,000 users personally, each and every one of them. And how's it going? What are you struggling with? What are your challenges? And it was amazing, because I think it was, I had just 2 quick stories. One is a user stopped me I had never met at the cafeteria where we did a drop-in and said, I don't agree with the decision, but I have to say the way this was supported is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen from IT in my 20 years here, right? And then someone posted on my LinkedIn profile, an employee who I also hadn't met, saying, I've been with Motorola 25 years, and I've never felt the company more connected than we did on that day. I mean, it was really, I think, something really special. It was an opportunity for IT to show up very differently, than I think we had in the past.
Fantastic. And if you go back one slide, I want to show, actually, this is the moment of your finger on the button.
The domain join. Yeah, this is the domain join right here. Yeah.
Switch the MX record over, and traffic would be flowing. And I think you hit on a couple of key points. Again, for many organizations, it is only partially about the technology platform. It's also quite significantly about changing the culture and increasing the level of communication and collaboration, which the tool can only do so much on its own, right? You've got to prepare, you've got to work to target those users that are going to need a little bit of extra help. Yeah. So some CIOs have said that moving to Google was the easiest migration they've ever had. Others have said you can't over-prepare enough. Yeah. Which one of those two is right?
I think they're both right. I mean, technically speaking, that's it. That's the level of, other than Active Directory integration and the stuff on the behind the scenes, and that was the extent of implementation right there. But on the human side of it, you have to, the way I like to think about it is, if you think of most of your organizations, probably the most powerful segment of people are probably people born between 1965 and 1975, more or less. And Microsoft Office was introduced to the market in 1990. And so if you think about that, the first and only reason most of these people ever used a computer was for Office, was for productivity. And so, you're really essentially going to a very powerful constituent base and saying, I need you to completely change the way, all the tools that you use all day long, just throw them out and start over again after 25 years. That's a very, very difficult and almost traumatic change for some people. And, but we were very clear on why we were doing this, the importance about it, and I think, as we're almost a year later, people see the benefits. Having gone from 45 video conference rooms that you needed an IT guy to connect it, right? To now, for only $600, being able to buy a Dell Chromebox we put in 500 conference rooms, and you have 500 fully immersed video conference rooms. It's totally transformed the way I think we collaborate as a company, right? And then being able to, from a telephony standpoint, being able to have your Office phone follow you around, use it on any device, move calls back and forth. These are things people just didn't know were even possible. So I think so the change, while it's hard when you go through it, I think if you have good reasons for it, and you're really committed to helping support people on it, and realize this is not a small change, and you have empathy for them, over time, I think people will have more patience because there is a learning curve, and I think we've gone through it well.
So again, I'll encourage people to submit their questions via tweets. We'll be taking a few of those as we get closer towards the end here. So one of the things that certainly jumps out is that Motorola has this very rich tradition of design and manufacturing and a long history of doing that. But sometimes those types of companies with sort of old school engineers are sort of the most concerned about intellectual property and security and things like that. So tell me a little bit about how you guys dealt with that objection, if there was one internally, and how you sort of got some of those folks come around to thinking about how it actually was equally, if not more, secure in the cloud.
Well, I mean, it's actually, maybe even the inverse is true, because we have 5,000 engineers. I mean, these are people that know a lot about technology. I mean, we're not an insurance company, right? So you got a lot of people that are kind of calling, you know what, on questions like, well, the cloud's less secure. So if anything, I think our IT security function was the one that was really the ones that were freaking out most about this. But I think if you put into perspective kind of the role that security plays, and companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft and other really good, respectable firms will pour a lot more into the spending on security than will really any other company. So I think for us, as long as I think we got rid of a lot of the myths around security with it, but from our standpoint, we feel very comfortable with our security profile. We take security very, very seriously. Our customers take it very, very seriously. And not all cases does it work. There's certain customers that we have that are in the government space that they still want things done a certain way, and that's fine with us. But I think as employees, again, really focusing on simplicity and elegance, it's really, unless you're going to do it in the cloud, and it's much harder to achieve that.
Yeah, for sure. So Craig, tell us a little bit about, in addition to the new name of the company, tell us about some of the things that you've seen most impactful in the organizations that have adopted, and how it's changed not only the tool, but the culture.
Yeah, it's been, and I think Motorola is a great example, but it's been great to go work with the IT teams before they do the implementation, and then to go back there after the implementation goes through and do check-ins and really see how people are using it. And what we've heard from Greg and his team is the amount of engagement, the amount of minutes, the amount of conversations that are back on the phone system, that are back allowing the team to collaborate. I mean, it's material, right? And they're now able to use their mobile devices from anywhere at any time. And that's kind of the beauty of having built this and launched it in 2015, because it can be built, it's entirely for the cloud. It doesn't have any legacy to it. And having the history of building a really scalable Google Voice product, we can, for the first time ever, have a product that a 10-person architectural firm and a 20,000-person Motorola can share the exact same telephony experience. So that's been great. And it's when we did go live with Motorola, like, we had full war room ready. We had 10 guys sitting in front of monitors waiting for things to jump on and issues to come up, and literally the phone didn't ring. Like, in one day we got rid of 3,000 phones, like literally within a couple of hours, just off the desks, and they were gone.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think one of the things I would encourage the audience to look at is, I think there's some preconceived notions around legacy. I mean, we actually looked at the log files of our Centrex system, and 50% of all lines were used less than 10 times in a month, and you're paying huge costs to support all that infrastructure, right? And then when you looked at audio conferencing, I mean, I think we saw something like 80% of all audio conferences were 3 or less people talking to each other, and something like 50% were 2 people, right? They were open just in case, and a huge amount of money being spent there. So we've seen a really big uptick in people actually moving to voice over IP, because it's just a lot more convenient than the phone. And even like with Hangouts, I mean, it's virtually eliminated the need for audio conference when you're internal. So that's, I mean, this stuff all sounds really, it's very elegant, and users look at it totally from the user experience. But when you look at it from a cost perspective, I mean, you can save a lot of money doing this.
Well, so that actually brings up a good point. Would you say that your transformation was more about cost or more about changing the culture?
I think it was both. I mean, I think anytime you can do both, I mean, that's the way. We always looked for that win-win. I mean, as a company, we carry a lot of technical debt, because over the years, Motorola was massive, and then it got a lot smaller. So we were always looking for ways to rationalize our legacy footprint. And we have 168 offices in 60 countries. So it's a lot of legacy. So anytime you could try to find this sweet spot of improving user experience and reducing costs at the same time, that's ideal. It doesn't always happen that way, but I think we're able to make that work.
So you mentioned it's been about a year since G-Day. I'm sure there were some things that were sort of expected and some things that were unexpected. Why don't you tell us maybe a highlight on both sides, expected and unexpected, and maybe a low light on both sides?
So what was expected? I think what was expected are the common complaints from small pockets of users that are power users in certain areas. Hey, I really missed this piece of functionality, the power users, right? I think that's was pretty expected. I think the things that were unexpected were, I mean, just to the degree people would adopt things like Hangouts. I mean, that thing, I mean, really, when I tell you, it was almost worth the price of admission to be able to do that. But I think the other thing that I didn't expect is how much creativity showed up. So, you know, I was in a hackathon that we had a few weeks ago, and the judging was all done online in real time using Google Sheets. And this is a group of people that, you know, I wouldn't normally, you know, kind of peg because they're kind of the Excel power guys. But I mean, they've found spots where they've really been able to find breakthroughs in creativity in leveraging the tools for what they're good at and what they're strong at. You know, and between Microsoft and Google, there's strengths and weaknesses between both, no doubt about it. But I think that they were as creative as they were, I think, has been you know, a surprise to me. And people really just, I think, have come around a lot more than I would have thought this soon.
So as technology becomes, you know, in most boardrooms, like one of the #1 factors, how are they going to use technology to improve the business? You know, one of the things that you've remarked on is that your company is going through a transformation to more of a cloud and services and data type of company. Right. And how is this platform helping your company make that transition and kind of, you know, putting IT in the spotlight and making them cool again, so to speak?
Yeah, well, the CEO said that at a town hall, IT is cool again, you know, which was funny. I think what's behind that, though, is that, you know, usually IT departments, there's two things you can count on us for. One is being cheap, super frugal, and then the other is being very risk averse. And I think those two characteristics are what spawn a lot of the complaints and shadow IT functions and all of that. And I think as a company who really is trying to move its products and services to the cloud and really recognizing that our customers are demanding mobile, you know, we have to lead by example. So we're able to dog food things that ultimately are going into the R&D of our products and services, which is really exciting if you're in IT. And I think the second thing is that if you are running towards the disruption, towards the technology, and really looking for breakthroughs in how people work, no one can complain anymore, right? We're not risk averse anymore. And I think, if you can find a way to improve that experience and reduce costs, then the thriftiness, that itch is getting scratched. So I think it's, you know, from our standpoint, a lot of the folks are telling us that the bold moves that we've made, not only they're very courageous, but they reflect sort of a role model example of, I think, a lot of where we want to innovate as a company, and I think it's been exciting to be part of.
And so one of the questions that came in was, what percentage of the employees have completely sort of ditched their desk phone at this point?
So 100% of the U.S. employees. When you go international, I think Dialpad is, you know, they've got a lot of issues to work out around. Each carrier has long distance. Who's going to pay for toll-free charges? So there's a lot of complexities when you're in as many countries as we are. But in terms of the U.S. footprint, I mean, all the U.S. users have flipped over. We go out and we look country by country because every country is a little different in terms of the carriers and the cost that you're paying. What's the cost of mobile related to? And so we do a business case in each and every country, and the countries where we feel we have a positive business case will convert, and countries where we don't feel that we have a positive business case, we won't. So, but I think of the overall employee population, it's probably somewhere around 45%. Okay.
Another question that came through Twitter that I saw a moment ago was, what's the story on interoperability, particularly between Exchange Calendar and Google Calendar? And I will tell you this, we've spent the last maybe year, 18 months really focused on the mobile calendar experience. And if you are a Google Calendar user, either at work or at home, I encourage you to download the new calendar app, the mobile app. It's quite impressive. Anyway, while we focused on that, we didn't pay as much attention to the web interface, which is sort of sits in front of the back-end components where the APIs for things like interoperability are being exposed. I will tell you this, we've turned attention back to development of the server side and the web front end. So you'll see some more stuff coming there. Every chance I get, I hammer on them about interoperability because we're seeing increasing deployments where a company starts with something other than Exchange, right? They're coming in with Hangouts, they're coming in with Docs or Drive, and that interoperability requirement is going up. So we know the teams are aware of the priority. We are going to be working on that stuff. Nothing to specifically announce today, but stay tuned on that. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our half hour here, so thank you all for joining us. Please, again, a round of applause for Greg and Craig. And if you all have any more questions, we'll be around after the show. Thanks very much.
Thank you.